episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
U.S. military drones. Again, this is being investigated by local law enforcement. What our initial assessment here is that these are not drones or activities coming from a foreign entity or adversary.
You're telling me we don't know what the hell these drones are in New Jersey are? Is that correct?
That's right.
It's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. That's madness that we don't know what these drones are.
From the Coast Guard, who said that one of their 47-foot motor lifeboats was followed by between 12 and 30 of these drones as they went through the water.
These are 6-foot drones that are somehow evading our detection. They are not being detected.
They're saying no threat, but how the hell do they know? They don't know anything. They don't know what it is. They don't know where it come from. They don't know nothing.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is a podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And sometimes we hover around other sorts of mysteries. And this one is quite baffling. To say that this is a talker, something we would say in the news biz, is an understatement of the century. This has got the entire world talking, and we're going to dig down deep into this whole drone frenzy, the dizziness surrounding the drones. We're going to look at it, and we've got some amazing expert guests. Now, the latest news, the federal government spokespeople have come out and said that they are deploying additional resources to address these aerial drones are prompting concern among primarily East Coast residents, but I think you're going to hear from our UK guests. It's happening across the pond as well. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, he actually weighed in today too. So it's reaching the very upper levels of the government. Of course, that is the entity charged with protecting the homeland, hence Homeland Security. And he says, there's no question that people are seeing drones. I want to assure the American public that we in the federal government have deployed additional resources, personnel, technology to assist the New Jersey State Police in addressing the drone sightings. Let me introduce you to the best guests. They're good ones. Rob D'Amico, he's always on the show, but you'd be interested to know Rob is also the former unit chief of the FBI's counter-drone unit. You heard that right. The FBI's counter-drone unit. Special Agent Rob D'Amico has served his country for 39 years. He's had a unique hybrid career in law enforcement and military service. He deployed many times as an FBI agent over to Iraq and Afghanistan. He's chased pirates through Somalia. He's gone after the DC sniper. And among other things, he has interrogated a handful, if not more, of terrorists trying to strike probably the United States and the UK. Next up, with that platinum blonde hair, looking sweet with the book Imminent over his shoulder. That is a bestseller. Vinny Adams, he's a UK-based UFO UAP researcher, the founder of Disclosure Team. It's a social media platform and YouTube channel covering many aspects of the UFO phenomenon, now affectionately known again as UAP. Vinny is also a boots-on-the-ground investigator. He makes annual visits to Columbia, not the university, the country, to investigate a 400-year-old light phenomenon there. And last, certainly not least, our friend Dan Zetterstrom. He's co-host of That UFO podcast. He, too, is a boots-on-the-ground UAP investigator. He's also a creative who specializes in art and clothing based around anomalous encounters, which I love. So welcome to one and all. Rob D'Amico, got to go to you first. What the hell is going on, man? This is more because I've been talking to you, and I can almost taste Rob's skepticism. I think Cake Spoo's coming to us from Australia or New Zealand. I always forget which, and I have no idea what that flag is because it's too small, and I probably wouldn't know anyway. But Rob D'Amico, to you, you were telling me, I think we were talking Thursday, Friday, they're just regular planes. These ain't just regular planes. So what's going on?
I still think, 95% of them now are misidentified as drones. When you're not used to looking at the sky at night, manned aircraft, low flying satellites, even planets look like drones. And anytime we went out as the FBI counter drone unit to Super Bowls, World Series, because FBI's jurisdiction is more for events and someone weaponizing a drone and trying to kill people with it. As soon as we said that, people started looking up and they started saying, well, there's a drone and there's a drone. And we literally had to go to apps like Flight Radar 24 that core, if you use that app, if you get the premium, you can see all the planes over a certain area. Some are at 9,000, 20,000, 30,000. And when you're looking from below, they all look like they're on top of each other. And then again, seeing a drone at night is tough. Determining that it's exact drone daytime, it's a lot different. So I believe it's that. But now that the hysteria started, we talked again. If I was a teenage kid in New Jersey and I had a drone, I'm a smartass. I'm going to be flying it over the mayor's house, the sheriff's house, anyone else who thinks they're seeing drones. I'm flying it, because if you fly a drone in the United States and it's in G-rated airspace, which is unrestricted, as long as you keep it under 400 feet, you have visual to it. It's not out of your sight, and you have your navigation lights on. There's nothing illegal about flying a drone. So I would do that. And I think now that's what you're starting to see. You're starting to see a combination of people misidentifying it, and now people flying drones to go find the drones, and people flying drones just to add to the chaos.
I'm going to be dripping in the latest news as we go around this best guest panel, and then please, I'm gonna open it up to the public, otherwise known as STS Nation. But I think we're going to get a good amount of people who are not necessarily regular viewers. If you don't know, this is a daily live talk show about the hottest cases in true crime. I should say the biggest cases, and every once in a while we veer off. We've done shows about UAPs on Sunday evenings with these gentlemen, and famously with Ross Coulthart, who's a big name in that world. And obviously this is a conversation that everyone is having, whether it's at their dinner table, the golf course, whatever it is. People are talking about it. I saw someone too in the chat just saying, hey, they're seeing them now in Riverside, California. They've been spotted pretty much everywhere. Vinny Adams, to you, are they seeing them over the UK, or is this right now predominantly an American issue, predominantly in the Northeast here?
They have been seeing them in the UK. I think it's about 3 to 4 weeks ago they started appearing in East Sussex over a number of military installations, most notably RAF Lakenheath. One thing I will say is that these incidents, these aren't anything new. There has been some serious incursions over sensitive military airspace since at least 2019, and mainly across America, but also over anti-ballistic missile sites in Guam. We've had them over nuclear facilities in Germany and Sweden. But them stories, they hang around for a few weeks, the public gets disinterested, and they sort of just disappear. This time around, I got into it because I was looking at the RAF Lakenheath incidents, keeping an eye on it, and I started speaking to witnesses who were going out from viewing spots close to the flight lines, and they were filming and seeing these strange objects. I'm initially drawn to this being a UFO researcher, but it doesn't mean I automatically go to that extreme length to think that that's what I'm seeing. We're seeing something. And I agree with what Rob said there. There are a lot of misidentifications because the mass hysteria has grown to such a pace that everyone's looking at the sky right now. But if we can just push aside those ones that we can figure out, there is still quite a lot left there. And I think the more conversations I've been having, I spoke with Mayor Michael Mellom from New Jersey privately, very briefly the other day. And, they're very concerned. They're having a lot of high ranking officials seeing these things as well. So I think it needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be dealt with a lot better.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of high-ranking politicians are coming out and talking about. We're going to get to that in a second, including.
Well, just because they're high-ranking politicians does not make them smarter than anyone else.
No, of course not.
Let's get that out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of them who happens to be smart but can be kind of crabby is former Governor Chris Christie. He said he's seen him at his house in Jersey, and he was freaking out. This is a comment I was talking about from Jane Joel! The drones are over Riverside and San Diego counties. Huge news. I'm in Temecula, California. They've been overhead nightly. We're close to Camp Pendleton. That's interesting. Ned Smith, to your comment, Rob, that, well, they're probably, regular aircraft or people who are getting confused. This is Ned Smith. I deal with Ned and I love it. But she's saying, good point here. Then tell us that. Why are they not telling us that? We're going to, what do you think, Dan? You've been covering, aerial phenomenon, the UAPs for a long time. I'm not suggesting in any way that these are aliens, and we can talk about that. I don't think you guys are suggesting that either. But I think there is this sort of kind of mass hysteria. And if they know what it is, then why are they not telling us here in the United States?
Yeah, you're touching on something really important here. We've kind of have a spectrum of things going on, right? Some people at one end believe it's all aliens and they're coming to get us. And then at the other end, they believe it's all planes. And as Rob and Vinny was saying, it seems to be a big mix. And it's really hard to kind of find the signal in the noise here. Even on my account, I'm getting videos sent to me, probably hundreds this week. So I can't imagine what anyone in, official positions are getting sent their way. And for myself, it's hard to sit down and go through flight trackers and check each and every one. So you kind of have to go with the ones that bubble to the top. So it's the ones that kind of get traction and the ones that people think look anomalous or weird or something like that. And when people aren't used to looking at the sky and they suddenly start looking at the sky and they're not familiar with it, they start misidentifying things. And that's not to say that all of these misidentifications, I prize witness testimony, but we have to keep in mind that these kind of things do happen. In 1994, there was a power cut in LA that prompted a whole bunch of calls to the police there saying, what's this giant cloud in the sky? And it was just the Milky Way. People hadn't seen it before. And so they were kind of freaked out by this, beautiful thing if you kind of go out and see it. But then on the other hand, we do have, Wright-Patterson, it just came out, was closed down on Friday night. And a notice to airmen was issued because there were drone incursions over Wright-Patterson. So there seems to be something going on and something fueling this fire. But as Rob pointed out, you're getting these people sending their own drones up. And it reminds me of that Spider-Man gif, of them all kind of pointing at each other. And it could be, public drones filming other public drones, filming police drones, filming public drones. And we're kind of in this big Ouroboros here. And that makes it difficult to communicate with any authority exactly what's going on. And in one way, I appreciate that they're able to say, I don't know, because when it comes to the UAP issue, they won't say that. They don't want to say, we don't know what's going on. The messaging has to be a hard, there's nothing there. But with this, they're saying, I don't know. And it's leading to calls of incompetence and questioning the government and the authorities, which is an issue. Because even if, say China or Russia or any foreign adversary wanted to cause havoc on the shores of another country, they're now discovering that they don't need to send anything at all. All they have to do is plant the idea that there's something there, and voila, this is feeding a national security issue. So it's this big problem that we've got. It's kind of eating its own tail to a certain extent.
That's so good. Like you've touched on so many things in there that one, like, again, Iran's not going to fly. They have really sophisticated drones and they're being used in Ukraine by Russia all the time. They have really good ones. But they're also not going to fly like with their lights on at an altitude that everyone can see them. Secondly, China doesn't need to fly drones. They have DJI that every video that people are taking of the country has already gone back to China. That's an inside secret on DJI. They own most of the drones. They get everything that goes back on video wise. You sign for it in the user agreement. It's crazy. But one of the things that comes up is there are gaps, and we can talk about them later. There's significant gaps in airspace security that we have.
I like this comment, D'Amico, by the way, not to cut you off. D'Amico, love you, but please don't gaslight us. People,
I don't even know what gaslighting is. Like my kids tell me that all the time, and I'm like, I have no idea.
You're trying to tell us something that we're seeing is not something we're seeing. That's what it basically means.
You know. So all these quote experts, you know how many times? Like I've been out there when we deploy with police officers to help us regulate this. They're not used to drones either. Like again, until you're in a specific environment. Like the first time I went out with my counter drone guys, they were the best, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I go out there, same thing comes up, and I'm seeing stuff, and they're like, "No, that's not a drone. That's this." Our radar was finding AC units on buildings because the way the propellers spin on a drone is mimicked by AC units, and if the radars weren't tuned for that, they're picking those up. Low flying planets, I thought those were drones, and they're not. So the technology is there. It's in its infancy, and it takes a lot of training to start doing this. So there's drones out there, but a lot of these people also going backtracking. Like the guy who said he saw 50 drones coming off the ocean said he re-looked at it and he took that back. The Coast Guard has very sophisticated counter drone systems, and they're saying that they're not seeing anything. FAA, who's in charge of airspace, is not. It's not to say that some of these drones aren't out there, but again, like which ones are illegal. But the panic that ensues that Dan talked about it's giving away almost the secret to our foreign adversaries, again, how to really cause chaos in the U.S. It's the same thing with the voting stuff that went on. They don't care who wins. Creating chaos in the system that it's not credible is what they're after. And now you're starting to see this, and especially with Amazon and UPS wanting to like start using drones for delivery. We always said that there's issues with drones and how they're flown, and how it's coordinated in the U.S. And it's getting to the point where at least this is bringing attention to it, because Congress is the one that hasn't been. I get it, like they're complaining now, but we went to them years ago. But I think I'm trying to think what 2020, asking the FBI get funding to train state and locals how to use counter drone systems, and it wasn't funded. So now they're the ones bitching that the FBI is not providing information. When we came to them and said, look, FBI is not big enough to do this. We need to train state and locals to be able to use these systems to actually monitor airspace, and it was denied. And now they're complaining.
I promise we're going to get to questions. For those who are just joining us for the first time, Surviving the Survivor typically talks about the biggest cases in true crime with the best guests, one of which is Rob D'Amico. But this is obviously a story, and we've made a commitment to bringing you breaking news. And I'm a news junkie, a former broadcast news guy. So this is as big a story as you can get. Vinny Adams, before you answer my question, tell everybody where they can find you on socials, including your YouTube channel, which is fantastic. My question is, Rob's saying, well, maybe, it's just a frenzy and hysteria. Then my question is, why now? Like, if these things have been up there this whole time, why suddenly everyone's seeing them?
Well, first of all, people can find me. Just search for Disclosure Team across all social media platforms. It's a very familiar black and white logo, very easy to find on YouTube as well. Why now? It's a good question. I mean, look at the geopolitical situation we're in. Here in the UK, we've been providing, high-tech weaponry to the Ukraine and that. So, maybe it's just sparking something from the Russians to send something over these bases in the UK. I mean, there's definitely something coming over, that's for sure. There's something over these bases. These objects are not planes. They're hovering for hours upon end. There are geofences surrounding these bases. These objects are completely not affected by any geofences or any anti-drone technology. This is why we're frustrated, because there is something there in amongst all of the misidentifications and that there is something there. The same in the US. We've got the Coast Guard saying they're having boats followed by up to 50 drones at a time. I mean, that's not 50 airlines in a line coming into land over the ocean, is it? So, it's difficult because we do look to people like our Congress to give us the answers. We've got people like Representative Adam Smith, one of the leading Democrat at the Armed Services Committee, having private briefings and coming out saying that his questions aren't getting answered. You know, there's this frustration coming at every level, and I think this is just what we need to keep our eyes on. We need to get to the bottom of it, and we need to get there quick.
But my thing is, if Coast Guard says they are followed, they have systems to track them. So where's the evidence? Where are they showing that tracking of 50 drones on their ships? Like, again,
I mean, it's certainly not public, that's for sure. But you know, there's reports coming out that they cannot find where these drones are coming from or going to. There is all of this, you know, and these are military, law enforcement, Coast Guard are all saying this. You know, I find it hard to believe that they're all falling for misidentification or mass hysteria.
I tend to agree here with Vinny Adams, but we'll get into it. You see, this is just another one of a gazillion comments, Dan. I'm from North Jersey. Go Jersey, the greatest state in the union. I guess I'm in Florida now. Maybe it is the greatest. And I can say they're absolutely genuine, mysterious drones being flown here. Saw one myself at 5:30 a.m. in the dark, no lights, 1,000 feet in elevation, barely a hum for sound. Nikki Cuds is a friend of mine, friend of the show. She sent me photos from her bedroom of drones in North Jersey. Dan, Britt K is saying, and it's true, a lot of these are not putting off any heat. Some are the 600 pounds. They're saying like the size of a car. How do you
know 600 pounds? How do they know 1,000 feet? I've had I'm not gaslighting. I've been I've had like aircraft fly over me at night. I've had all this. I've had like 600, from looking at night that drone is 600 pounds. And trust me, I'm not saying there's not UFOs out there. That's not my even premise. I think they'd be smarter to fly than to fly like they are now, so to speak.
Yeah, but Dan, I mean, this begs the question again. And by the way, thank you to Pep Paranormal Fan, aka Renee S. Really appreciate it. Happy to be a new member. Happy to have you here. Appreciate it. And that's why I love doing shows like this. Number one, they're super fascinating. I always learn from the best guests. And number two, they attract new people. We're watching something really special. We are very fortunate. Interesting. That's what Caesar says, but I don't know if everyone feels that way. Look at Rob, you know I'm giving you a hard time here, but news channels are filming these drones everywhere. Not sure why this guy, Rob D'Amico, is trying to gaslight us, but it is way too late. But Dan, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Vinny because I want to give you a chance. And again, Britt K, who's in our chat all the time, she's read and getting, her own reporting that she's reading, saying that some of these are not emitting any heat. I got to ask you, why would this frenzy just pick up now? If these drones have been around for years, they've been around New Jersey for years. It's got to be in a greater number, greater volume, and more visibility. So what is happening?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And with all these things, there's usually an inciting incident. Something started it off. If one person saw it, and this is kind of what we're saying when we're talking about hysteria. We're not talking about people being dumb, just running around with their hair on fire, screaming in the street. We're talking about just a general kind of bug that passes to people where they're looking up, they're unfamiliar, and they've had a bunch of their neighbors say they see something in the sky, and then suddenly they're seeing things that they think are unfamiliar in the sky and reporting them as drones, and these things snowball. But as I say, it usually comes from at least an inciting incident, and there are many different possibilities for that. We've heard a bunch of theories go around over the past kind of week about maybe these drones are US tech kind of sniffing out nuclear material or something that's been brought in through the ports related to, materials that were lost, that were being used in Ukraine, or I've even heard Fukushima, things being shipped over and something going missing. But it's really hard to say. And I wanted to touch on something that Rob said earlier about gaps in airspace defense. I think that's important to remember. Very often when we talk about US defense, we kind of get caught up in this idea of $1 trillion budgets and, essentially having this impervious wall around it where the US where nothing can get through. When actually, just this year, February, right? The Chinese spy balloon kind of came through and was shot down. And that led to NORAD kind of opening up what they call their filters, identifying a whole bunch of other objects, some of which we've seen pictures of, some of which we haven't seen pictures of. And there was a communications breakdown there as well. And usually that kind of signifies that it was a national security issue, that they're not sharing information because that can give away, capabilities and things like that. And a lot of thinking around this incursion is that maybe someone is testing capabilities and they want to see what the response is. But as Rob said, there are cheaper ways to do that. If you're going to do that, you don't even need to send something over. So we could be looking at something as simple as someone saw someone flying a hobby drone, freaked out about it, posted about it, and the appetite and kind of paranoia in the world is really high right now. So everyone kind of hooks onto it. Even ABC News were kind of pushing a video of this out of focus thing they called an orb. And I've seen that pushed around social media a lot when it's simply the planet. And I know that, I'm from the UFO kind of world. So to say, you just saw Venus in the night sky is kind of a laughable thing in that world. But it was an out of focus star, and that's what it looks like. And the cameraman made a mistake. And if you watch the full video, the video that isn't just clipped on social media, you can see that when the guy zooms out, you can see the aviation lights again. And, it's probably a plane. So, yeah, there are difficulties around, as I say, finding the signal in the noise, but it usually comes from at least one inciting incident that kind of snowballs up. But I wanted to ask Rob, and feel free to jump in right after
Dan,
this, Rob.
you hit it on the head. I think when the politicians told people to start looking for the drones is really when it escalated.
That's interesting. Go ahead, Dan. You wanted to ask.
I was just going to ask, I was watching the public hearings on these drone kind of incursions the other day, and one of the guys from the FBI said that they only have a $500,000 budget for drone defense. And
did he say that?
He did, yeah. And someone else said that's smaller than the FBI's budget for coffee. Is that true?
So we're gonna get into some stuff that I don't want to get into. I put in I'm trying to think what year it was.
Dan.
I put in for $10 million for my budget. And it got cut to maybe 1 million and then got cut further. And then I had the best counter drone guys, and they cut things so far that 2 of them left. And it's a shame. And that's when we were going to Congress asking for enhancements. The Bureau, there's so much stuff going on in the Bureau. We needed Congress to earmark funds for this. Say, we're going to give you so much money and it's going to be for counter drones. And that's kind of where I'm going back at them and saying, hey, look, we went to you. We tried to tell you that this is going to be big. I scared the FBI director. I said, look, you get one agricultural drone flying into a college football stadium, just spraying, not even anything poisonous, just spraying fluid. You're going to have more deaths on the panic that ensues of people leaving that stadium. And then it's going to be like 9/11 with commercial security after that, because you can't secure all of it.
Yeah, Rob, here's a question directly for you. I'm sorry, I'm going to come to you in a sec.
I'm getting crushed on these comments, but go ahead.
And I kind of love it, Rob. Erica here. This is a funny side story. We like to digress on STS. Obviously, we're talking about some serious stuff, but this woman, Erica, saw my dog, Ethel, a boxer with the world's longest tongue, on this show. And she started sending us emails, and we love you, Erica, but we thought she was like kind of nutty. And then it turns out that she said that her dog looked just like our dog. And Louis the boxer, it turns out, is Ethel's brother. It is true. We tracked to the same day, same location. They are related. So, Erica, my apologies. So that's another sort of phenomenon. Vinny, you're about to hop in.
What point were we making? Sorry.
Well, you know what?
Remind me, get back to
Rob. Let me.
Stuff.
So Rob, let me get you to her question. Actually, who monitors these drones to ensure that they are not military grade with weapons like Hellfires on board?
Well, it's hard to monitor, like if they're like, again, a drone be able carry munitions has to be a certain size. ISIS started using to drop grenades, but that's a very finite, threat, so to speak. When you start getting into Iranian drones that they're using in Ukraine, much different story. DoD has tons of systems to detect those. But I started going into, like, if we know what kind of drone it is and what its RPMs of its propeller should be at a certain weight, you can start using AI to figure out if a normal drone that's flown, if it's carrying a weighted object, because the RPM's flying at the same speed. So there's ways to do it, but some of the sophisticated drones that you're talking about, nation state wise, that's a different problem set, and that's DoD's in general. And again, to launch a drone like that has to come from, again, I saw the whole, Iran's drone aircraft carriers. They're not off the coast. We know where all those are. Trust me, there's systems out there that track them around the world. So it's one of those things that, yeah, you could fly a drone carrying a grenade, probably going to go under, quote, the radar, pun intended, so to speak. But it's going to have a limited, effect, so to speak. One thing that remind me to get back to this whole, like, the conspiracy theory of the nuclear material stuff. I'll get back to that. But
and by the way, I have some sound on that, and we're going to get to that. And I've got sound from Chuck Schumer, senator here from New York. Thunderball McGillicuddy here. Vinny, I'm going to go to you. The orbs are Project Bluebeam. The drones are contractors who are told to fly them around in civilian AOs. It's simply the DoD trying to scare the American people for more funding. I mean, I'm not going to call Thunderball McGillicuddy a conspiracy theorist, but maybe slightly. But there's so many things I want to add. One thing I'm thinking about right now is Rob knows, Meave Moen, Steve Cohen, our producer. He's flying into New York right now, and he was texting us from the plane, and he's like, I'm going into the drone zone. But I mean, Vinny, on a serious note, what's to say that these don't interfere with low-flying airplanes going into JFK or LaGuardia? Hope Meave is fine. I'm going to couple that with so the question for Vinny is, what about actual airplanes and the potential danger here? And then STS Nation, let me know in the chat, you want us to stay on this week and bring on some crazy, wild Meave Moen guests. We'll do some true crime too, but let me know. Go ahead, Vinny, in terms of a danger to actual flying real human airplanes.
Yeah, I mean, air safety is obviously, one of the most important things here that we have to talk about. There's a lot of organizations that are really pushing for that at the moment. I mean, I want to follow on for something that Rob was mentioning there about these offshore ships, and that there were, you only have to go back to 2019 off the coast of Southern California. There were drone swarms happening months long, often 100 miles off the coast. You had Navy ships out there doing workups. The Snoopy teams, which are the teams on board these ships, were filming these things, seeing these things. They couldn't work out where they were coming from as well. We're about a year ago, Langley Air Force Base, we're getting swarmed by these things as well. And the left hand wasn't talking to the right hand. No one could figure it out. We've got ex-high-ranking officials such as the former Undersecretary of Defense, Christopher Mellon, talking about this, saying how vital it is that we start, dealing with this kind of thing instead of just brushing it under the carpet, as it were. So, these things are definitely happening, and somebody needs to answer for it. We've had members of Congress calling out the White House. If this is nothing, then somebody needs to make that statement and put it all to rest.
I agree with Vinny 100% right there. Enjoy your bourbon, Rob. What do you put a lime in there yourself, or what is that in there?
No, that's ice cube. I have ice cubes with my initials on them.
That's not many men can say that. Not many people can say that. You're gonna have to tell me how that works. But Dan Z, to you, and Dan, please also tell people where to find you on the socials. This is true. I have this in my notes. Apparently, a medevac chopper couldn't take off because there were too many drones surrounding it, and I don't know what happened to the patient, but that's a real significant problem. Space Force won't tell you it's Space Force. If you remember, then Donald Trump and now President-elect Donald Trump started Space Force. So, I mean, Dan Z, first of all, where can people find you, of course? And I mean, this is a real issue. Vinny's the disclosure team, but at the very least, shouldn't the government come out and say, hey, it's this, or we just don't know what it is, instead of skirting and evading the questions? And we're starting to look insane, I'm sure, to the rest of the world, because you've got Chuck Schumer you're about to hear from, and many other high-ranking people saying, tell us. And if politicians can't get you to tell them, what's going on?
So people can find me at The Signal. That's The Signal, but with a Z instead of an S, because someone else took it, on all kind of social media. Yeah, the medevac one was a startling one. It's one of the stories that has kind of stood out to me here, because I'm not sure if medevac crews actually have anything on board to be able to take readings or see things in the sky, or any counter kind of drone technology that, they're just not set up for it. But something was certainly keeping them on the ground there, which speaks to something being present, at least in that case, showing that it's, even though we're talking about hysteria, there's a subtlety here. It's catching like wildfire, but there do seem to be genuine happenings kind of mixed in here. Maybe that was a hobbyist. Maybe that was something else. We don't know. And people are getting frustrated, I think, with this, because the messaging on it seems so wishy-washy. We've got senators going on the news talking about Iran motherships off the coast. Meanwhile, you've got the DOD disavowing that, and the White House saying, we don't know. And it's just, as Vinny said, the left hand is not talking to the right hand. And it's funny you mentioned Chuck Schumer, because Chuck Schumer was actually a very big advocate of some language that was meant to be going through the NDAA this year and last year to do with UAP. And one of the things kind of I've learned addressing UAP is that the drone issue kind of comes into this data pile, right? If I want to see the anomalous things in the sky, it's going to include some of the weirder things that people aren't used to seeing, like drones. And when the defense kind of budget isn't being given to kind of sift through that data pile, you're essentially kind of, it feels like they're turning a blind eye to the defense of American people and soldiers and personnel. And it's kind of getting people riled up, because they think they're not being protected against something. And this is why we need clear, concise communication, instead of all these people kind of talking across each other. I wanted to also address, someone just mentioned Bluebeam, and I'm seeing that going around a lot. And Bluebeam is one of these things that it gets trotted out in the UFO community so often. And
Tell us what it is. Tell us what it is.
So Bluebeam is something that originated with a lady called Helena Blavatsky back in the, you're looking at the 40s and 50s here. And she had this idea that there was going to be a false flag invasion on countries that would look like something other. What she was actually talking about was some technology being used to project the prophets, or the gods of people in local areas, so that they would think they were being told to do X, Y, and Z. So that obviously changes as you go around the world. In America, we'd probably see Jesus Christ in the sky. Middle East, you're kind of going to be looking for someone like Muhammad. Problems with depicting Muhammad aside, it's not to do with UFOs. Now, through the decades, as Bluebeam kind of got passed around, it became like a branded thing, and it's landed with someone called Dr. Stephen Greer, who pushes it as this idea that the government, again, is going to fake an invasion from outer space to unite the people. The issue kind of there is that Stephen Greer has been caught red-handed, unfortunately, paying people to drop flares, and then you can pay him like $5,000 to go out in the desert with him and summon ETs. But it turns out it's just he's paying people to drop flares and then pointing at them and going, "Ooh, what's that?" Which kind of speaks to this whole thing, right? That people don't know what they're seeing in the sky, so they attribute it to something that it's not. So yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. And to the whole Schumer thing with the NDAA and the legislation he was pushing through was called the UAP Disclosure Act, was really about getting to the bottom of all these anomalous sightings, no matter what they were, of sifting through these data piles. And the legislation was really robust. It had sections considering eminent domain, where the US could kind of take technology off companies if it had been given to them kind of in the past, but also things to do with evidence for UAP. And I mean UAP in the very technical sense, just something unidentified flying and that people don't know what it is, not necessarily alien, just unidentified. And one of the things proposed was to kind of have a review board of people of various different backgrounds and, technical knowledge who could help sift through this data pile, and the evidence would be given to them. If it was a national security issue, they could advise that, it wouldn't be released. If it was in the public interest, it would be released. Unfortunately, though that would have been pretty instructive right now, that was actually pulled out of the NDAA and not passed due to people like Mike Turner from Ohio. And that touches on, Wright Patterson and what we're talking about on Friday night, having the NOTAMs issued and Wright Patterson, shut down for a few hours. So there's clearly something there. The legislation that is being pushed to figure it out, it keeps being thrown out. And so we're left with an American people that right now feels like something's going on in the sky. No one's answering it. Everyone's talking across each other, and there's no authority they can look to for guidance. And that's just leading to more panic.
Yeah, and Vinny, are they talking about this in the UK? Like, is it big news in the UK right now?
Not so much big news. The mainstream media haven't really picked upon it like we kind of like them to. I mean, it gets touched upon in the tabloids, but that's just a lot of sensationalism, a lot of misleading headlines. But everyone's talking. The general public are talking about it, definitely, especially across social media. There's a lot of groups that I've recently joined to kind of get in on this conversation and try and speak to people on the ground. These drones disappeared from Lakenheath, over a week ago. They've apparently come back today. They're being seen again. So I'm looking to speak to some of the people that I've connected with to get more information.
Yeah, this is a good comment too. I'm going to come back and get Rob's answer about drones crashing. Again, Rob, that goes to not to answer it yet, but a 600-pound drone that we don't know if it's a 600-pound drone. If it falls on a person, that's not going to be good. But let's listen to Chuck Schumer here, Senator, senior ranking senator from New York State.
In lots of recent sightings in New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Staten Island. So it's remarkable with all these sightings over the last while, why do we have more questions than answers? If the technology exists for a drone to make it up into the sky, there certainly is the technology that can track the craft with precision and determine what the heck is going on. Today we're asking the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to deploy special detection systems like the Robin, which use not a linear line of sight, but 360-degree technology that has a much better chance of detecting these drones. And we're asking DHS to bring them to the New York, New Jersey area. I've written the Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary Mayorkas, not only to urge action on technology like the Robin, but also to get him to support legislation. It's called S-1631. Right now, state and local law enforcement does not have the ability or the legal authority to detect drones. It's only the federal agencies. But because there are so many of these drones in so many places, our local authorities want and need the help. This legislation will get them.
Never one to miss an opportunity for a press conference is Chuck Schumer. Hang on, Rob, 1 second. I live in Ocean County, New Jersey. I saw one clearly low above a soccer field while I was driving an hour ago. Really creepy, followed by this one. This goes to earlier. Now people are saying they're hovering near Camp Pendleton. Just hopped on drones over Encinitas, California, in Southern California, coastal 30 miles south of Camp Pendleton Marine Base. I caught footage November 13th and last night. Freaky. This whole phenomenon, particular one, started really in earnest in mid-November. Rob, jump in with what you're going to say, but I got questions for you.
All right, I like Schumer. Like I guess the Robin, it must be in his home district and actually contributed to his campaign. Because
what is the Robin? Explain that.
It's a system. He talks about radar. Radar's like he talks about 360 degrees. Radar's not the solution. Multi-sensor counter drone systems are the solution. Radar, RF, visual, anything else out there. Like he kept mentioning it, and I'm like, well, they must have like gave you a lot of money to mention them on the air. And again, we went to Congress for the request of funds to train state and locals. State and locals do have the ability through systems to detect the drone. What they don't have the ability is to mitigate the drone. Mitigating the drone is actually taking it over electronically or by other means to bring that drone down if you deem it a threat. It's not, you cannot do that without a lot of understanding of a drone. I will never mitigate a drone in New York City because I can't fly a drone in New York City. There's GPS canyons in New York. GPS can be up to 800 feet off. If I'm trying to fly a drone that I took over in New York City, I'm probably going to crash it into a building because I can't specifically give it a landing thing. I went back and like to hover drone, you can do. Even a hobbyist drone is 249 grams or below. Even that falling at 400 feet could kill a person. Taking drones down without the ability to properly land them or secure the place that they're going to go down is irresponsible. Now, if it's coming into, like I always said, if it's coming into the Super Bowl stadium, I am willing to do things to try to crash it into the parking lot because it's a lesser of two evils, so to speak. But like this whole thing about just like throwing electronics out to bring drones down is irresponsible. It gets to the point where like they're speaking on half truths that they don't know about. Their staffers are feeding them information. The politicians don't know enough to really get up there and say anything. So if you really want to talk counter drone stuff, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to even talk about last ditch efforts of a drone coming down without guidance and using electromagnetic pulse to disrupt it so it doesn't hit its target. But this whole thing about these people coming out there saying, "Oh, this is the way to do it," is really irresponsible. But again, that's politicians. They're irresponsible. Sorry to go off, but like that whole thing, I tried and tried with Congress to say, hey, look, let the FBI train state and locals. Let us vet the equipment because all the equipment's not the same to do the job of detecting and, if necessary, mitigating a drone.
Did you all see that 2 men were arrested in Boston for flying drones near flight paths? That's going to happen for sure from Steel Magnolia. But Vinny, to you, I mean, someone had made the comment. I think it was a really good comment. It was over the summer, I believe, where suddenly people were saying something, and it turned out apparently it was a Chinese balloon transversing American airspace. Apparently, I don't know if that was ever 1,000% corroborated. Do you think that was a catalyst for all this that kind of like triggered some of this hysteria a couple months later? If you can call it hysteria.
It's just another in a long line of things that have happened over sensitive airspace. And in the case with the Chinese spy balloon, it was in early 2023. They allowed this thing to enter airspace from the north and traverse almost the entire length of the country before they decided to shoot it down over South Carolina. But you have to remember as well, at that time, there were 3 other objects that were tracked and shot down, and no information was ever released from that at all. There's still some friends of mine, some journalists that I know who are going very hard at getting some of that information out because it's become overclassified and it really shouldn't be. A lot of the times these agencies will fall back on sources and methods as the reason they can't release this information, and that's simply not the case. These images, videos, this data can be sanitized and released as it should be.
Well said. I'm with Vinny tonight. So NewsNation is kind of an upstart fledgling cable news channel. This is a guy named Rich McHugh did a package, as we call it, a story for NewsNation. He lives in New Jersey, and this story caught my attention. Let's watch it together here.
Pay it much credence. I thought it would turn out to be a bunch of pranksters, and this would all be over by now. The experience I had last night, however, changed the way I feel about this story completely. What I saw was more sophisticated than I ever imagined. Take a look.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 lights, 6 lights.
I didn't believe what I was seeing, but what was I seeing? We're here in central Jersey. We've been looking for the past hour. I think we've seen about 40 or 50 of these drones. In fact, there's one over my shoulder right there. One after another, these drones appeared in the night sky. If you look real close, they look like fixed-wing aircraft, about 8 to 10 feet wide, colorful, white blinking lights.
That is not a plane.
Definitely not an airplane, but what was it? Hours earlier, I was invited to join the Ocean County Sheriff Department. They launched their own drones to see if they could intercept the mysterious aircraft New Jersey residents have been reporting in recent weeks. The department says these mystery drones evade detection because they don't give off heat like regular drones.
Why do you think that is? We don't know. It's just something that we haven't, it's not something that we've had our hands on. It's not something that we've experienced.
Something they hadn't experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
Advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction also. There were 50 that were coming off the ocean.
And this is a sworn officer?
A sworn officer, yes. We contacted state police, we contacted the FBI, we contacted the Coast Guard, at which point the Coast Guard went out with their boat and they reported seeing 13 following their boat. And then the Coast Guard also advised that they went over them about 300 feet and had a wingspan of about 8 feet.
I see one right here.
Did I see the same thing that officer saw? I'm still not sure. What I can show you is this video. What I can tell you is I've never seen anything like it before.
There you go.
That, by the way.
Yeah, the 50, by the way, that is Ocean County Sheriff Michael Mastronardi. That is, obviously the name tells you, but it's a county close to the Atlantic Ocean in a little bit more southern, not southern Jersey, but just south of, I guess, central Jersey. Vinny, what do you make of that report? I mean, he's a good reporter. I know him. He's a producer. I should say I know of him. I don't know him personally, but I've followed him. And, he's a guy that admitted he was kind of skeptical. And then he went out there and saw these things. Again, I'm just a believer in like where there is smoke, oftentimes there is fire, and there's so much smoke here.
There is, and I got to give credit to NewsNation in general. They are always on the ground doing the reporting that a lot of the big networks aren't doing. And Ross Coulthart, who you had on the show, he's obviously a big player on NewsNation now. And Ross has got a lot of sources that speak to him from within the government, inside the intelligence community, and the military. As have I, and Dan has as well. We are being told that they are taking this seriously. There is something to this. So it's good to see that gentleman there going from a skeptic to not so sure, because he started seeing these things. I mean, it's happening.
Yeah.
Can I
hop in.
So the news report there was really interesting because what we had was a guy looking for small drones or commercial airliners. In the United States, the Postal Service, for example, will use kind of smaller, low-flying aircraft to kind of, ferry around all your parcels and things like that. So what he filmed there looked to me closer to that kind of thing. And it also spoke to, there was that clip at the end there where he said, what is this? This is over our shoulder. And it was out of focus. And I think that speaks to the difficulty we're having kind of getting any decent footage of what people are seeing in the sky. People are using their mobile phones. They're using TV cameras. These things are designed not to film far away objects at nighttime. They're designed to take pictures of your dog and your friends and, at the park and well-lit conditions. They're not designed for low-light photography. And so you end up kind of seeing these things that, they're just specks of light. And I even saw one governor post a picture insisting that they were drones, and he'd actually posted a picture of the constellation Orion. As I say, that's not to say that all of these things are mundane, but there is a kind of a subtle spectrum here of things that are happening. And one of them is that people don't have the equipment to film far away things in the night. The whole thing reminds me of a few years back in the UK at Gatwick. Gatwick Airport was shut down for, a long time. And airlines estimated they lost millions kind of not flying out of Gatwick during that time. And no one was ever caught for flying the drones. And, basically a drone was reported as flying. They shut the airport down. The press were on site, public were on site trying to take pictures of this thing. No one was ever kind of found. The police ended up arresting a couple that they actually later released, and the couple sued them and won about £200,000 because it was kind of, they were falsely accused, and the media went after them once they were identified, and it seemed like they were being made scapegoats of. And part of me wonders if that's what we're going to see happen here with all these reports of arrests, that people are going to be arrested and later released without charge when it's found that actually they had nothing to do with this, and just this heightened awareness of what's going on is kind of giving some people, I guess, itchy trigger fingers.
Well, listen, I'm not one. I try not to be a conspiracist, but there is, Rob, a conversation being had by social media goers about this possibility that they're looking for radiation from a dirty bomb, that these drones are used to sniff dirty bombs. And I have something. I'm going to play it after you respond. And it's from a guy who he builds, you probably saw the clip. He's a manufacturer of military grade drones, which he sells to the United States military, who kind of came up with this. You've got that smile going, Rob. What's your response?
All right. So there's a clearance in the U.S. government called Q clearance, which is nuclear material devices. Not too many have it. I had one. I know how the government looks for nuclear devices. It's not by drones. Drones, to look for that, is for overseas. Because you don't fly drones all over the city without people seeing them. So why would you try to look for nuclear material with drones that would then do what exactly it's doing right now? Nuclear material is looked for in ports by embedded equipment now in every port that we have. It's very sophisticated. It, like every container, every ship coming in is looked at for nuclear devices. And then if we think that there's a nuclear device, it is done by people. And there's a lot of people trained in it within federal governments like the FBI. And then there's a lot of, there's a very small number of tactical people, we'll just give a hint on that, to actually find it and render it safe. They don't fly drones everywhere looking for nuclear devices. There's like every container coming into the US goes through systems that are looking for that. You don't need to do it with drones. If it's brought in otherwise and we get a threat stream on it, drones are not the primary way that we look for nuclear devices. So, or material. So them flying drones everywhere up there, you would not see. You would see a bunch of black Suburbans, we'll give that as a general term, that would look for nuclear material by certain sensors and stuff. So the drones looking for nuclear material is just so outlandish. It's so irresponsible to throw out there. That's not how it's done. You use drones for places that you can't get people to. That's not here in the States. I'm not sure I can go past that on certain things. Yeah. It's just craziness that there's conspiracy folks out there that are going to make this fit their story. Not saying that drones aren't flying, but for that purpose is just outlandish.
Yeah.
What about them? Sorry, Joe.
No,
I was just going to say, one of the other theories I've heard is that they're using the drones to kind of look for a gas leak or something like that. Can you speak to that, Rob?
A gas leak?
Yeah. Like a methane leak, something like that. Just a leak.
Again, you don't need to use drones. Gas companies and stuff like that. You can put people out with vehicles. There's all kinds of there's also the same thing with gas leak. There's chemical detectors that both the government, FBI, Homeland Security, and DOD have to look for certain chemical devices too. And they drive around and they pull in all kinds of air and they analyze it at a unbelievable rate. So if you're looking for specific gas, there's other materials out there. You don't need to fly a drone at all to do that. One, it can't carry the payload that needs to do that in real time. You would just drive trucks up and down certain, like if you thought it was in New York City, you would drive vehicles that have these big sensors in there to do that. There's also ways from the air. Government agencies and DOD can also look at that type of thing. So again, drones aren't the method to do that. Drones have a specific purpose, and this isn't it.
Can I add to that as well? Sorry, Rob. Let's take away, say, the New Jersey and the public sightings for a second. A lot of these things have been seen over nuclear facilities, so surely they would be good for surveillance over nuclear facilities if it was a foreign adversary. Would that be more like the use that they'd be good for? I mean, I'll say there's one case from Tucson,
Rob,
Arizona.
Rob, don't get yourself arrested on my show.
No. So I'm trying to think, like, again,
although it would be great.
Nation states have satellites to do that. So what would a drone, like, again, I'm not saying like hobbyists don't fly drones around nuclear sites. Like they have their own counter drone stuff.
Yeah. I was going to say,
I'm trying to think of a reason like someone would fly a drone by a nuclear site. Again, so many of the nation states have enough information on nuclear sites that like they don't need to fly drones. If a terrorist is looking at doing it, if you're looking for a threshold, nuclear sites have their own counter drone systems up anyhow.
I'll just say the drone one of the drones that was chased by a helicopter in the Tucson incident was flying into altitudes up to 10,000 feet and above. It was flying at over 100 miles an hour into 40 mile an hour headwinds. It was outpacing the helicopters. I mean, that doesn't sound like hobbyist drones.
No, it's not. Yeah. Again, like a specific incident like that may, like, you have to go and dig. And then also, why is NORAD not like track, like they have different equipment and stuff? But I would have to go into that incident like specifically to say, hey, like what's going on?
That was just one example, but you know, during the Chinese spy balloon, NORAD sensors weren't switched on to picking up a lot of things at low altitudes because they were so focused on high altitudes. There was quite a lot of uproar about the way the systems were set up. So, you know, they are prone to. You
do look at
issues.
the most likely, and then something happens that you then start to say, okay. But then again, like when you look at this, when everyone says, "Oh, it's a military thing," even if it like. So one of my jobs in the FBI was to set up military training for the Marines and special operations forces in U.S. cities. There's congressional mandate that we have to notify the congressman in those areas of any military training. So on the big scale, that's not happening. But don't you think if the military was doing something and it caused this much uproar, they would probably stop? I mean, everyone's getting so much crap about it. Like, you'd be like, all right, like if you're doing something, let's turn this off for a bit and let things calm down. What were we doing? Were we doing it like wrong that was doing it that way? But there is congressional mandate, both to DOD and the government. When you start doing certain things, you have to notify the congressman and the House of Representatives and senators of that area that you're actually doing military training in their area.
I completely agree, but we know there are departments within the DOD and the Pentagon that are mandated to do very specific things, and they do not do them, and Congress are aware of that, and yet no heads are on the chopping block.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I work with JSOC, which is one of the most secretive units, and like, we do the notification because like too many people get in trouble. Now, some of it gets a bit crazy, like you know. I can't even go into it, but they do notifications because they don't want to get in trouble to a point either. Because it gets like, especially when a congressman or senator is like, you were doing what in my area? Like, same thing with like seeing like Black Hawk helicopters flying in the cities, people start calling and panicking. And that's where it came from.
Yeah. This has been happening too. Matthias, thank you. By the way, if you're new, we are a live nightly true crime show covering the biggest cases around the world, particularly in the United States. We've got an amazing panel every evening, thanks to Steve Cohen, the COE. She's the chief of everything. Space Coast on the West Coast, who runs the show, and of course our amazing mods. If you're liking this show, please hit that like button and subscribe, please. We've got a Patreon page to support us, where we put out a lot of BTS behind the scenes stuff. Interesting question from Matthias here. What do you think about reports, Dan, I'm going to toss this to you, whose car radios are going crazy when they were below one of these drones? Greetings from Uruguay. There you go. And then I'm going to get to this comment right afterwards.
This is one of those aspects that kind of speaks to why people are picking it up as a UFO issue. Because in many, many cases, when UFOs show up, electronics start going on the fritz. You know, people's cars kind of switch off when they're under these objects. And yeah, this clock thing, there's been a few of them. One guy's microwave was kind of going crazy. There was someone's car clock that when they were underneath it, it was changing time. And so it suggests that there's an interaction between one of these objects in the air and one of these objects on the ground. And when you speak to people who have worked on analyzing UFOs or UAP for the DoD and various other branches of the government, they all talk about propulsion systems or technologies that, through kind of various side effects, they have this effect on objects. And as I say, this is then being picked up by the UFO crowd, and kind of we're asking the question, you know, is there something stranger that maybe was an inciting incident in this? Was there something anomalous that was seen? And that's why it's kind of blown up. I think it's a really good question to ask, but we kind of have to, this is where, you know, I get excited at things like that because I'm a UFO guy, you know, but we have to remain calm, as they say in the UK, keep calm and carry on. We have to gather the data, look at what the data is telling us, and follow that where it leads, no matter how excited we get. We all have these inherent biases for things that we want these to be. And that speaks to people looking for drones in the sky and mistaking things. It speaks to people looking for UFOs in the sky or meteor showers or, you know, whatever. We have to realize that that can cause us to misidentify things. And that's why it's so important to follow the data, to look at things like Star Walk, which I use to kind of identify stars. I used an app called Orbitrack, which is really good for identifying satellites in the sky. And also, you know, Flight Radar 24/7, ADS B Exchange as well usually has a few more flights on it too. So you have to kind of work through those steps. So although I find the kind of clock thing really intriguing, I wish there was more data with it. I wish we had, you know, exactly where it was, that we had video of the object over the car instead of just the clock going on a fritz, because people can look at that and go, oh, so your clock's broken. And it's hard to kind of push back against that when it's a story in a video of a clock. So anyone out there who's seen these things, do those checks, get a bunch of photos and video, best you can, and present that data to everyone.
Yeah.
I'll just say as well, Joel, sorry, quickly. I saw a specific post, I think that this question was based on, that someone was listening to a Christmas music radio station in a car, and it had this really weird, whirry kind of sounds, and they were attributing it to these drones communicating. And you know, I saw in the comments there are hundreds of more prosaic explanations for that, but people see these two completely separate things, throw them together, and you've got the script for a Hollywood movie, and it's exciting. So, you know, it does go too far, and, you know, 9 times out of 10, Occam's razor is in play here. So, you know,
yeah, it's Vinny, not Vince, but I like it anyway.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Sour vodka here. Then I'm going to go back to this. So Rob basically laughed off the idea of sniffing out nukes, and Rob knows, I guess, because he's at high levels of classification in the United States government, classified information. But sour vodka. An unidentified drone maker said in the film, and it's a video, that the drones may be looking for a nuclear bomb from Ukraine that has gone missing. Now, the real news guy in me would never, ever play this. However, with zero transparency right now, you know, and not getting any answers, this is what's going around social media. I can tell you, Joe Rogan came out, the man who I plan to catch in podcast numbers and overtake at some point soon. But needless to say, Joe Rogan, he came out, and he's got obviously a massive platform, and he said this is the clip that has him the most worried. So in that sense, it is also making news. So I'm just going to play this. This is just to give, because it's not the entire thing. It goes on for like 9.5 minutes, but this is a guy who claims to be a military drone manufacturer, military grade drone manufacturer in the Midwest. Seems like a very honest guy. You're about to see him in a second. And he said that he personally knows of someone that touched a weapon in Ukraine that has now gone missing. That is some sort of, Rob's laughing, nuclear warhead. And look, normally I really wouldn't play this because I feel like it adds to the frenzy, but it's all over social. You got Rogan, who's arguably, one of the biggest voices in America right now talking about it. So let's just take a listen. Rob is so disgusted, he turned his camera off. Here we go.
Special sensors that can detect radioactive material. So we also have special sensors that can detect radioactive material. So with this gentleman that I had spoken with, who was trying to raise the alarm to try to get somebody in the government to say, hey, we need to work together to go try to find this nuclear warhead, none of that ever happened. They knew that warhead was on its way to the United States. That's all that ever came of it. Nothing ever happened. This government did not do anything at all to help this gentleman raise the alarm and raise awareness that there is a very deadly weapon on its way to the United States. It's out there. Nobody knows where it's at now. It left Europe. Now it's gone. So my guess, my own guess, is that these drones are not nefarious in intent. If they are, they are, but I doubt it. But if they are drones, the only reason why they would be flying and flying that low is because they're trying to smell something on the ground.
Now, you just heard Rob D'Amico say, no, Rob, respond to this gentleman whose identification is not known.
Again, like drones aren't the way to do it. When you can put people on the ground and vehicles on the ground, drones are not going to be able to carry the equipment that's needed to do this very long. Why would you fly drones when you can drive nondescript trucks, black Suburbans in the movies and stuff to look for this? We have plenty of systems out there looking for this. Police officers and other agents carry basically Geiger counters that look like pagers, like that tell you what like your ratings are. So like it's not necessary to fly drones. If I have to go into a non-permissive environment to look for nuclear material, and you're going to also do it by satellite and planes that are like built to do this. So it's one of those things that it sounds good, but that's not how it's going to happen.
There you go. And you're hearing that from a guy once inside the FBI and once part of the running the counter drone team. I didn't know that there was even a counter drone team. Dan, to you, question asked much earlier in the chat, and please, STS Nation, now's the time. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and we'll do some rapid fire Q&A here for the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes or so. But I mean, Dan, how do you make sense of the fact? Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, guys. We'll be done in 17 minutes. Then just let me know when. COE. Why are they just being seen at night? I mean, obviously, it's easier to see something if there's lights at night than during the day. Let's start there. So, why evening?
I think, I mean, you almost hit the nail on the head there. It's easier to see these things at night. People are off work. They're going to be looking up at night instead of being in their offices and things like that. And they almost announce themselves, right? If you go out after we kind of finish here, I'm going to go for my nightly walk on the beach. And the planes that I don't normally see in the sky are going to stick out to me like a sore thumb in that environment. It doesn't really make sense that these things would be spying and have lights on them to kind of declare where they are. So, you can kind of take that off the table. But yeah, they're not trying to hide if, there is anything there, and kind of putting the addendum on that, whatever started this kind of notwithstanding. But that clip is that clip sounds scary, right? Mm-hmm. And it's dramatic. And I think that's why it's kind of gotten some traction there. Yeah. But I see a lot of comments on it of people saying, this feels right. This feels like it's right. And feelings aren't facts. And we have to remember that. And like I said, follow the data. Just because it's posted on social media or just because an authority kind of says one thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is absolute. The data and the facts are absolute. So when you hear someone like that saying, describing a story that sounds realistic, that kind of hits you in your feels and makes you worry and, lock your doors and things like that, this is just what social media does. It gets under your skin and it gives you an answer in the chaos of the world. It's easier to just take something like that and accept it than it is to just go, I don't know, maybe it could be, but maybe it could be 100 other things. You can act on it, right? If you want to get out of town because you think there's a nuclear bomb in New Jersey, you can get out of town. But prior to that, you're just going to be sitting there spinning your wheels with anxiety in your head, thinking it over and over, looking at the night sky. It's kind of dangerous, I think, posting things like that to social media because, like I said, feelings aren't facts, and we have to be led by the data here.
Yeah, well, speaking of data, Vinny, to you, by the way, I'm jealous walking on the beach. So am I, and I live about a mile from the beach. I don't think I've ever gone on an evening walk, COE, because we're always working on the podcast. But maybe it's time to be a little more like Dan Z and find some time to walk on that beach. It'd be so relaxing with our 3 little kids, but that's a whole other story. So, Vinny, to you, the man who's more aligned with me tonight, I think. The United States Coast Guard officials there reported at least at one base in New Jersey, 13 drones, and they are claiming wingspans of 8 feet. Naval Weapons Station Earl, which is in Colts Neck, New Jersey, which is actually a beautiful area. That's where Bruce Springsteen lives, in case you're wondering. Nice farm land in New Jersey. Confirmed multiple instances of unidentified drones entering its airspace. You heard earlier Dan talking about another like an airstrip that's military that had to close down for a bit. And now the FAA has also implemented temporary flight restrictions. So why would all this be going on if it's a whole lot of nothing? I mean, you got the Naval Weapons Station, you got the Coast Guard saying 8-foot wingspans. There have been thousands. I mean, I'm sure tens of thousands of sightings. So why all these incredible contradictions?
This is the big question, isn't it? This is why this has been propagating for so long and it just continues. Why are we not just getting to the bottom of it? It should have been done and dusted by now if there was nothing going on. It's baffling. The question almost answers itself, doesn't it? If there's nothing going on, then why all of this? Why is all these military bases, reporting these things and shutting down airspace and that? It makes no sense.
So
It
if
really
they know
doesn't.
it's 8 feet, how do they know that? And show me the evidence then. What system told you it was 8 feet wide? Then please show me whatever system, whatever measurement you got besides you looking up and saying, oh, that's 8 feet or 600 pounds or whatever.
Yeah. By the way, someone yelling at me for disseminating, quote unquote, right? It's not Rogan. I'm not disseminating. It's not his thing. It's all over social media. Just said that he commented on it. So chill out there. It's a Sunday night. Everyone relax. So Rob D'Amico, this is your world. Now, members of President Biden's administration, they held a media call on Saturday with a lot of members of media, and they basically said, hey, we can't tell you anything. That was the call. But they did say that these mysterious aircraft were first seen by thousands of residents flying over northern New Jersey in mid-November. It went on to say that they've gotten over 5,000 tips, Rob, since November. But this quote-unquote FBI official during this call with reporters said that of those 5,000 tips in New Jersey alone, it warranted fewer than 100 investigations of those 5,000 tips. What is that all about? By the way, here's the poll. COE put it up. She is the chief of everything. The drones are a sign we're not alone. 19% mysterious, but no one knows. 22% a nothing burger, just drones. 18% military searching for something. I knew a band one time, shout out to Jay Schwartz, lost but looking, and maybe they are lost but looking right now. Rob D'Amico, 5,000 tips, according to this quote-unquote FBI official, and less than or 100 or fewer than 100 warranted investigation. So what about those 100, or let's say they're 97? What do you do if you're the FBI? You go out there in your black Suburban. What do you do?
Well, you take the information, you try to push it against what you do know and understand. But when I was a new agent in Miami, you had to stand night duty maybe once or twice a year, and all night you got calls from people talking about the aliens talking to them, and it literally was like one after another of people with the craziest stuff going on, and I listened to them to stay awake, and it would be like one of those things. But so the ones that like are so crazy that you just put into the one side, the other ones that it has a person, you have a date, time, you have a location, you are looking in this direction that you can at least put some research into. And I don't know exactly what was done, so to speak. But some of them are, again, so outlandish that you just got to push them off into like, hey, we're not going to waste our time. Of the 100 people come in, they're submitting photos or submitting their date, time, which direction they were looking at, so you can look into it. Again, I don't want to go in and say, hey, this is exactly what happened, because I don't know. But as soon as you started having like all these people saying, look for drones, this all started manifesting. And now that it's on, like, I don't know how many news shows I've been on for this now. It has just gotten so caught up on everything. And my prediction was you're going to start seeing around the country, because all these people now are going to start looking up and seeing all other things others are looking for. And you're going to start having people with drones start flying them. It's going to add to the chaos. And I'm not sure exactly how you come down from this, so to speak.
By the way, someone made a salient point on social media that maybe Americans have finally put their cell phones down, and now they've noticed the drones, because we've all been heavily addicted to our cell phones, me included. But Dan, you're definitely a voice of reason here. Dan Z of Zignal, with a Z, as they say in the UK, Z here. But so on this call, I thought this was really interesting. We got about 7 more minutes, and I'm going to let these guys go. I know they have to get going in a few, but this is fascinating to me. An FBI representative said what we were just talking about. Then a DHS representative on this call, and I don't like the fact that none of them are named, said that the amount, and this is a quote here, the amount of actual drone activity is likely less than what's being reported. So, I mean, Dan, I've got more to add to that before you answer, but kind of condescending to me, from a government official. DOD, with Department of Defense, obviously, then jumped in on this call and said that the agency has gathered, and I quote, no intelligence or observations that would indicate that the drones were aligned with a foreign actor or that they had malicious intent. But, he says, or she, I don't know, just to simply tell you, we don't know. We have not been able to locate or identify the operators or the points of origin. That is the problem I have. They're saying, don't worry. It's a big nothing burger. You guys are overreacting, but we have no idea what is going on here. They're openly saying that there.
Yeah, and this is the problem, right? Rob spoke to it earlier, and I think it's true on both sides. Prove it. One way or the other, prove it. If you're saying it's nothing, show me you're working. This kind of thing is, if you put out a scientific paper, you have to show people you're working so that they can understand and reproduce it. Whatever claim you're making, you need to be able to prove it. So the transparency here is the issue. If the guy's going to say it's less than is being reported, then show us what is being reported. If you can discern that something is a commercial airline, show us the flight path and the video and show us that it lines up so we can kind of, check it off and take it off our list of things to solve. If you're going to make claims on either side of the issue here, you need to prove it. And people hate kind of being asked to do that because it requires more work than just kind of looking up at the sky and claiming that, something is 64 SUV sized or 10,000 feet in the air or whatever. But I think that's what's needed here from all figures of authority, so that people can, relax about this, essentially. Can I ask Rob about one more scenario that I've seen kicked around?
100%. It's your walk on the beach that's getting delayed, not mine. Go ahead.
So, Rob, I heard one of the ideas kicking around is that there's something called the Unmanned Aerial Systems Authority Security and Safety Act that actually expires on December 20th. Now, I haven't had time to check that. I'm literally just lifting it off social media. I wanted to see if you could speak to it, if something expiring could cause, a kind of, I guess what they're getting at is a false flag activity for reasons of, gaining funding or something like that.
That's one of the more intelligent ones I've heard because, because they've none of that's been passed into longer legislation. So it was every time they had to go through it, it would have to be renewed, so to speak. But I don't know who would I don't know who would benefit from that, and I don't know. I wish I thought of that when I was asking for my $9 million, literally, because I would have started flying drones like this, crazy to get my budget. So it's funny because someone must understand, and I'll have to go back and ask some folks. I don't know when the current one is ending, or if it was only like done year to year. That always killed me because my authorities, if I had a 5-year authority with that, I could say I need this much in this year, this much in this year. I could budget out 5 years, but they kept doing it year to year. So in that, the Bureau would take my budget because they're like, well, you don't even have a 5-year plan because we don't know this law is going to be around in 5 years. So it's kind of crazy that someone put that out. Do I think the government's coordinated enough to do that to get their funding? No. That's one of those. I'm like, wow, that's pretty intelligent. I don't think that's within the government's ability to say, hey, we're going to run out of funding, so let's throw some drones up and get everyone looking at it. Though I do think this in general, like I talked about, there's a lot of gaps in airspace safety and monitoring that I hope this comes out of, and I hope Congress figures out what we went to them a few years ago, saying like we need to train state and locals because there's not enough federal agents to do this. The technology is very complex, so we want to be able to look at it from a federal standpoint. We get the funding, we train state and locals to do it, and then in certain incidents, we give them ability to mitigate drones because that again is a step above just detecting them.
By the way, one thing that Americans will not be stopped doing, that is watching football on Sundays. It doesn't matter how many aliens, drones, UAPs are coming into this country. Ned Smith's watching the Detroit Lions. Football goes on in this country. Does not matter what is happening around us. I can completely concur here with Jay Barkley, Vinny, and Dan, our best guests. More of this, please. We're going to probably stay on this whole week. And Steve Cohen, we need a little break from true crime. It gets heavy at times. We'll still do a couple stories.
I do like this, that I'm not talking about horrible things, that like we can have some humor with it. We can smile without like people like hitting us up as being horrible people.
Yeah, agreed. A very good person. Vinny Adams, he is a UK-based UFO UAP researcher, the founder of Disclosure Team. You can find him across social media, Disclosure Team. He's also a boots-on-the-ground investigator. And speaking, Vinny, this question is for you. So one of the things I think I heard your friend Lou Elizondo talking about, and the book is right over your left shoulder there, Imminent. I've not read it yet, but it is said to be a fascinating book. He said, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that people are about to unmask themselves at high levels of the United States government regarding, things of non-human origin. I don't have the verbiage correct. You have that correct, I'm sure. But basically that a lot of people who know a lot of things are going to come out. And so that this could be a psyops to get people prepared for what could be coming. Your reaction to that, is that pure insanity, possibility, and your final thoughts?
I mean, look, I think anything is a possibility. You have to leave all options on the proverbial table in front of you until you can tick them off. I mean, I know it's quite a diplomatic answer, but I'm open to all things. I am very much data driven, just like a lot of other people. I want the evidence and the proof just as much as everyone.
Yeah, look at this. Very well said. Sherry, whatever it is, don't worry about it. Sounds like a good idea. Dan Zetterstrom, he is co-host of that UFO podcast, Boots on the Ground UAP investigator, and all around good guy that's interested in quote unquote high strangeness. And that immediately makes me think of Art Bell of Coast to Coast AM fame, that he would have been loving this, absolutely loving this. Dan Z, your final thoughts as we say goodbye on this Sunday evening late in the UK.
Yeah, I just tell people, remain curious about this, keep following it, go outside, look up, teach yourself about the night sky. I'm a big stargazer, so I'm big on people knowing what's out there and enjoying the kind of the peace at night and things like that. So yeah, not like the Netflix movie Don't Look Up. Do look up, but remember, take a photo, take your GPS, know the compass direction of where you're looking, report it to the proper authorities so that they can do the job filtering it out and get those flight trackers downloaded. But yeah, be curious, because the universe is bigger than we know.
For sure. Look at this Knoxville agent. I could listen to Vinny's voice all night. There you go. Jerry D here says Vinny and Dan should come back with Rob to talk more about this stuff. I'm sensing some STS singles here. The British, the UK accents grabbing attention. He took a lot of heat tonight, which I kind of like secretly because I'm a sadist, I guess. But Rob D'Amico here, he is the former unit chief of the FBI's counter drone unit. He dedicated close to 40 years of his life service to this nation in the military and as a special agent of the FBI. He is an American hero. If you rip on Rob, I'm coming for you. The things that Rob has done, I would venture to say 99.97897% of us would never, ever do, including chasing pirates through Somalia, hunting for the DC sniper, interrogating terrorists in war zones. The guy has done it all, and he knows what he's talking about. So before you go and criticize him, understand this guy had clearances at levels in the government that none of us had, unless there's spies watching from the CIA, which I'm sure there are. There's a drone maybe hovering over the studio. Rob D'Amico, you get the final say tonight.
So one, like the whole PSYOPs thing, like the restrictions on PSYOPs, even against the bad guys, is so restrictive. And the ability to do PSYOPs on the U.S. people by the military is actually a non-starter. You're going to jail if you do that. But again, doesn't stop people from saying that's what's going on. And it's like, I'm not gaslighting people. I'm trying to give you my insight to what I was exposed to, what I know's out there, like the nuclear stuff and all that. Like, it all sounds good when these people put it together, but when you really look at it, you understand how things work. It doesn't make sense. And I'm trying to give you that insight. I'm not saying you guys are like, people are dumb. I'm not trying to say you're not seeing drones. I think there's some drones out there. But when you're coming to me and saying it's a 6-foot drone, it's 600 pounds, like, okay, how do you know that? When you've been in the business of looking for these things and understanding the technology, you're kind of like, okay, show me the proof, so to speak. But it's one of these. There wasn't much calendar talk on this one, which I'm like, all right, I'm like taking a lot of heat. Nothing about the calendar, so it's one of those nights, so to speak. But it's been funner than some of the stuff that we talked to, as far as like true crime of people getting killed and other horrible things. So I've had fun, but I'm ready to go back and watch some football.
And D'Amico, I don't want to call you out on national YouTube, but I believe the word is more fun. No such word as funner, but I will cut you a break since you're an FBI.
I majored in accounting because I suck at English, so I'm going to take your word for it.
And by the way, I have no idea why, but if you guys remember Blockbuster, which is here. Oh, look, D'Amico just bounced off. I don't know what happened there. That was by accident. I can guarantee that's one too many bourbons right there. But there used to be a thing at all Blockbusters when there was VHS tapes. please be kind, rewind. I will amend it to say, please be kind and just unwind. It's Sunday night. Don't let the drones get to you too much. Huge thanks to D'Amico, who I'm bummed just popped off by accident because I know he'd want to say goodnight to these guys off camera. But a huge thanks to Dan Z and Vinny Adams. We'll get him back on. Love you, America. Love you, the UK. Love you, drones. Love you, UAPs. And everyone, be safe, be smart, be happy, enjoy life.